Hi, hey, hi, it's me, your Void, and we're filming standing up today. Why do we film standing up today? Because I felt like it. Apparently there is a bunch of just energy in my body, and so now we are filming standing up. Anyway, that is not the point of the video today. I already made a vlog where I was only allowed to read when standing up. You can check that out somewhere. Today I come to you with another recommendation video because I felt like making a recommendation video. This time I'm not going to recommend you any kind of genre or very specific books. I'm going to recommend books that are under 200 pages long. Novellas, one might say. Why am I going to recommend novellas? Again, because I felt like it. And novellas are fun, and I feel like novellas are getting overlooked a lot of the time because you either have these grand books, with like the entire story in painful detail, or you have comics and mangas on the shorter end, but there are really great stories out there that are being told in under 200 pages, and I just felt like highlighting some of them. So here we go. The first recommendation I have for you is a series of books that is becoming one of my favorites kind of quickly, and that is the entirety of the Singing Hills cycle by Nghi. All of these are under 200 pages, and I believe this is an ongoing series, actually. And this is basically fairy tales for grown-ups, kind of. It has the very same energy of your typical fairy tales from like the Brothers Grimm, let's say, where you have all of these kind of whimsical things, and it's just real enough that you can imagine this happen to you, but at the same time it is so unreal just because of these slight magical aspects to everything. But these magical aspects are only magical to us living in this world that we call real, and the characters in these novellas, for them these magical things are as normal as it is taking out the trash for you. That has this fairy tale-esque charm to it. Now, what is the Singing Hill cycle about? We follow Chi. Chi is this monk slash chronicler, and it is their task, their mission, to travel the country and pick up on absolutely everything. In the first one, we see Chi go to this old mansion where an empress once lived, and this empress is of historical significance to the country Chi is moving through. There's now this one opportunity, like something happened, and now it's like the first time you can go to this specific mansion, so Chi is heading there and is just recording what they see. Quite literally, we get entries of when they find a little statue. They describe what the statue looks like, what it is made off of, if there is any indication of who the artist is. They note that down, they note where they found it, how they found it, I guess why they found it, and they just record everything they see, everything they experience. And in this mansion they meet a woman named Bunny, and Bunny tells them how life in this mansion was, because Bunny was actually working for the Empress when the Empress was living in this household. So while Chi is recording stuff about the items they find, Bunny tells them part of the overarching story of what happened when they were living here. And this builds this wonderful little story cocooned in of itself, and it's like flashbacks, but it's also at the same time just Chi hanging out in this mansion, and by the end you just because everything comes together and you know what happened. And that is all there is to this. It's just Chi having these moments of chronicling history in one way or another. I can't tell you anything about 3 to I think 7 of these novellas because I haven't read them yet, but I'm looking forward to reading them because of this fairy tale charm. Every time I read them, they are not these epic scope adventures. They're actually pretty tiny adventures, but they are written in such a loving, beautiful way. I fell in love with this series so deeply because it has this nostalgic vibe without being a blast from the past. It just evokes the same feelings of wonder from when you were a kid and someone told you a fairy tale. I don't know if you remember the first time you heard, I don't know, the story of Little Red Riding Hood, the story of Cinderella, but that feeling is what I get from these books. But it's for grown-ups, and I just love that. The next series I can recommend is the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, because yes, Yes, where the Singing Hills cycle is inciting nostalgic feelings of being a child, of childlike wonder. That shit's just funny. That shit is almost the antithesis of that. You know, you have the childlike wonder of fairy tales, and then you have Murderbot, and Murderbot is so done with mankind. And I feel that on a spiritual level. In the Murderbot Diaries follow Murderbot, the titular character, and it is a sentient android with biological parts. It is a person, and technically it was built as a tool, and it served as a tool, but at one point it became self-aware, and it started to disable the programs that keep it in servitude, and now it is its own person, and it has to navigate the fact that it is its own person. It just wants to be left alone and watch silly little online shows, but for some reason it gets roped into all of these mishaps surrounding humans, and even though it doesn't like humans, it just can't help itself but help these people and try to keep them alive. It is really good at keeping them alive. It just doesn't want to keep them alive. It thinks humans are incredibly annoying. Yet here we are. These are just funny little tidbits, and I just fell in love with Murderbot. The internal monologue of Murderbot is just so spot on, and I feel that on every level of my existence. But at the same time, you can see that Murderbot sometimes just pretends to be this annoyed. I don't know if Murderbot realizes that or not. Probably not, because human emotions are something completely foreign to it. But I'm pretty sure Murderbot sometimes just pretends to be annoyed, or thinks it should be annoyed, when in actuality it does form emotional connections to these people, whether it wants to or not. I have read almost all of the entries in this series. I think I'm missing 2, including the newest release. I'm not quite sure. And it's just hilarious. You can read these kind of as standalones, but they are interconnected. There are characters that show up left, right, and center again and again and again. And there is kind of a big bad evil person, company, whatever. But given that this company could be any company, I would recommend reading these in order, but these are extremely quick reads, and I very, very much recommend the audiobook for this, because the narrator, the personality this narrator puts into Murderbot is just perfection. And given that all of these books are just the internal monologue of Murderbot, perfect. Just go with the audiobook. It is amazing. And once you're done reading it, I can also recommend the show. Is it exactly like the book? No. But it is a great adaptation. I can recommend that show if you are looking for something funny out in space. It has this charm of old 2005-ish low budget sci-fi shows. It's just an HD basically, but it's so good. It's so good. So if you want a quick and funny read, go for Murderbot. Now, if you want it quick and spicy, I can recommend with my entire chest the Creature Café series by Clio Evans. This is extremely spicy. This is also monster smut, so if you are not aware of certain anatomical, let's call it creative liberties, authors can take with the anatomy of certain people, maybe don't start with this one right away. Pick up a Lillian Lark or something. But this one is like monsters smut to the max. There is no plot, no thoughts, just people falling in love. Because the entire premise of the Creature Café series is that you have this cafe. It is literally called the Creature Café, and it is run by the ominous barista. And the barista has made it his mission to couple up humans with monsters. He wants to see the world just live in peace. So he couples up monsters and humans, and he is incredibly good at that because he can see who is fated to be together. Yes, all of these are fated monster romances. Insta-lovey to the max. Like in book 1, Little Slice of Hell, we meet in a cafe, we don't even get to take a sip of our coffee before we head up to the park and do things. These are, because of the nature of who Clio Evans is, incredibly smutty. The plot is basically non-existent. The characters are kind of cool though. Like, the characters are just deep enough that you can believe that they are actual people. But again, we don't spend a lot of brain cells on anything other than the smut scenes, and the smut scenes are amazing. And they are also filled with any and all kinks. If you have a kink, it is probably inside of one of these books, because that's what Clio Evans does. I wholeheartedly recommend them. If you need something quick and smutty, just go for one of these. They are amazing. You can read all of these as standalones. The individual romances are standalones, but this is very much an interconnected series, and the further you get into this series, the more a background plot happens. I would actually say, in starting at Little Risk of Fall, which is I think book 8, the background plot becomes the foreground plot. Again, I'm using the word plot very loosely here, but the story of the romance is tied to that background plot, and that background plot revolves around the barista and what he has going on. So even though you can read them as standalones, the first 5 ones I say go perfectly as standalones, have nothing to do with anything, but the plot in the background will push into the foreground more and more. So if you can, read them in order. If you don't want to, read the first 5 as standalones. It's fine. Heed the content warnings, because Clio Evans is very much a dead dove don't eat author, so if it says it has this inside the book, it is inside the book. Trust me, from someone who read a lot of Clio Evans's work. I have read almost all of these. I'm missing 2 from the Creature Café Era 1. Yes, I say Era 1 because Clio Evans fell so in love with their own universe that they wrote a spin-off series and a second era of Creature Café. I own all of those novellas. I just have to get around to reading them. I am currently all the way up to Little Wings of Fate. I have to read that one next, and then I can finish out the first era. But my god, it is a lot to read. There are so many entries in this series. Also smutty but a little less monstrous is Sanguine by Simone. This one is a very short novella. I believe it's like 60 pages or something. Like, it's very short, and we follow a vampire who is on vacation. The problem is, while on vacation, a vampire hunter knocks on his door, and he's like, I just wanted to go on a vacation. Yet here we are. But instead of dispatching of that hunter, he starts flirting with the hunter. One thing leads to another. It's short, it's spicy, it is perfect if you are looking for a quick vampire read. I do have to say, this is not just insta-lovey, this is the most insta of insta-loveys I have ever read, right? Like, they figure shit out, deep emotional stuff. They figure deep emotional stuff out very quickly. I myself thought it was a little too quick. It could have used like 10 more pages at least. But I wanted to have a quick and dirty vampire read, and I got a quick and dirty vampire read. I do love Sierra Simone's writing style. There's not much more I can say about this. This is, as far as I know, a standalone. I myself hope that this is one of those ideas Sierra Simone had, and she just wrote it, and she just dished it out. I get that. Sometimes that has to happen to free up your brain space. But my god, do I hope that she goes back to this and turns this tiny little novella into a full-fledged book. A, because I love vampire books. B, because I love Sierra Simone books. I need this to become a grown-up book. I know the point of this entire video was me saying, hey, we need to appreciate the short stories in our life, but oh my god, I need this to be not a short story, okay? Then I have another series for you, and that one is a 3-parter, I think? And we're going back to the fairy tale aspect of things with the Black Trans Fairytales by St. Lynn, which is a... It says on the packaging what it is. It is a retelling of Grimm's fairy tales. I think we have the Little Mermaid, we have Cinderella, and I think it is Sleeping Beauty in the last one? I'm not quite sure, but we have 3 fairy tales from the Brothers Grimm, and we take them and we turn the main characters into Black Trans characters. And then we tell their stories, and they are so beautiful. I kid you not when I say reading these gives you the definition, the emotional definition of what gender euphoria feels like. The way these are written, you can feel the joy these characters have when they are finally accepted as who they are, not what others want them to be. It's so good. Strangely enough, these feel less like the fairy tales they are supposed to be than the Singing Hills cycle, but it's the formula. You recognize this is the Little Mermaid, this is Cinderella, and stuff like that. You do recognize where it came from, and it's adapted into a modern version of it, and it's so good. It is so good. And they are also, I think, more around the 100-page mark than the 200-page mark. So they are very quick reads. So you can knock all 3 of these out in a day if you really wanted to. The next recommendation I have for you is The Deep by Rivers Solomon, which is a gritty, I don't want to call them mermaids because they're not technically mermaids, story. The story is based on a poem, which was then turned into a song, I believe, and then became another song. There's a whole backstory to this specific novella, and it is such a visceral read, I want to say. The entire premise is that during the slave trade, they would throw pregnant women overboard. The story then picks up, okay, but these women still gave birth to children, and these children born underwater from this tragedy turned into something else, and they were nourished by the whales, and eventually they found each other and built this entire underwater society. Again, I don't want to call them mermaids, but they are essentially mer people. They are fish people, and they live underwater, and they have all of these customs, and one of these customs is that no one remembers the tragedy that created them, except a singular person. And that person has to carry hundreds of years of pain and misery and trauma. And once every year, this person goes into like a giant hut with everyone else and shares all of these memories. Everyone remembers, they have to guide them through it, and by the end of this event, they take all of these memories and put them back into themselves and suffer alone in silence so that everyone else can have a happy life. And we follow a character who has this job, who is supposed to do this, but they can't take it. They can't take it anymore, so they give the memories back and leave. And that has consequences. And then they make their own memories and all of that. And it's just such a visceral story about who we are, where we come from, and what informs us as people. It is so good. It is so good. I also recommend listening to the poetry slam song-ish that came out of this by David Diggs and his band. I think it's a band, because that thing is just, that's a poetry slam in musical form. It is such an experience. I can only recommend that book. But this is a heavy hitter for how short it is. And an even heavier hitter, not in terms of the message it conveys, but in terms of the visceralness of it all, is The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. I have read 2 Cassandra Khaws in my time. This one being the better one. The other one, I DNF'd. Nothing but Blackened Teeth, I DNF'd. I could not get through this. But this one is amazing. So if you have only read Blackened Teeth, just trust me, this one is so much better. This one also follows a mermaid. This one's actually a mermaid. Like, she calls herself a mermaid. It takes the whole mythology of mermaids actually being meat-eating monsters instead of the Little Mermaid, I want to be where the people are aesthetic. And this mermaid teams up with a plague doctor, and they just travel the land after this mermaid has it's kind of her fault that this entire landscape has been eviscerated. She was forcibly taken out of the ocean and married off to a king, and that king did what kings do. And she had a bunch of babies. But she never told anyone that these babies would be mermaids and that they would be very, very, very hungry. And she basically told them, "Go forth, my children. Take what you want." And now these kids have eaten absolutely everyone and everything in the country. And I mean, fair. Very fair. So now this mermaid is all alone, and she cannot really go back to where she came from because of certain things that happened. So she travels the country and meets this plague doctor who was nice to her once upon a time and is nice to her now. And together they just travel the land, and they come upon this very weird cannibalistic cult of children, kind of, and they figure stuff out over there. The plot of the story is not really one that has a beginning or an ending. It just kind of happens, and we just focus on these two characters and how they relate to each other and what they do. There is stuff happening, but at the same time there is nothing happening. But it holds the balance perfectly to keep you engaged and wanting to read this story through. It's a bit confusing in certain areas, but it all kind of makes sense when you take a step back and think of this whole thing as a horror fairy tale. It has, again, these fairy tale aspects, but you have to, like, take a step back and remind yourself, okay, just go at it with, like, fairy tale logic, that not everything needs to make sense to you in order to make sense to these characters. And I love that one. I love that one. The ending, I was a bit unsatisfied by the ending, but it's a good ending. It's a good ending for this story. It's just not the ending that I personally wanted to see. But that's a whole different story. That's like my personal opinion. But the rest of the book, it just fits. Everything fits. That is what I wanted to say. So there you have it. A bunch of recommendations for books under 200 pages. All of these books are under 200 pages. I checked for once. I did my research before starting the video. So if you need a quick read for whatever reason, be it a readathon, be it because you need to reach a last minute reading goal, or you're just in it for a short read because you need a quick win. So yeah. If you made it to the end of this video, let me know if you have any novellas that you really, really love, so I can expand my own catalog. Let me know if I inspired you to pick any of these series up. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because we need to appease the almighty algorithm. And if you don't want to talk to me, leave a frog. Leave a frog emoji down in the comments below, I guess. But yeah, I guess I will see you in the next video. Bye.